I want to talk about this morning something that is not that comfortable. A sense of urgency. You see, that's hard for me because I'm the exact opposite of a sense of urgency. In fact, my wife will probably tell you, standing up cheering, yep, he's probably the worst procrastinator I've ever seen. If there was a professional league for procrastination, I would have made the Hall of Fame. Because I never believed in doing anything until I had to. I had no sense of urgency. Just live life as it comes. This was kind of the way I was when you look at it. The boss says, right, we need an urgent response to our productivity problems. My response? Why don't I think about getting together a few people and drawing up some preliminary draft proposals for a possible strategy framework that we could think about sitting down and talking it through? What? Well, let's put it off until later, basically. But you see, a sense of urgency, it seems to be non-existent unless it becomes a life and death situation. And unfortunately, we have a life and death situation that when I look into the world, I don't see a sense of urgency. And that's in the realm of faith. Oh, I'll go to church next week. Maybe the week after. I mean, there's a good movie on. This movie's not on very often. I want to take advantage of it. Or I'll start going back to church maybe next month. I've got some things I want to take care of first. Or I can go around to get baptized next week. Or maybe the week after that. Or even worse, there are churches, and I use that word churches as I did 2 weeks ago, as a quote-unquote group of people called together. There are churches that will put off a baptism until they have enough to create a nice ceremony. Not much of a sense of urgency about saving someone's soul there, is there? Or I can put off asking forgiveness for my sins until later. He'll always be there. I can put off asking for help. I mean, after all, it may work out if I just leave it alone. I may have had a problem just work out if you left it alone. Me either. So what I want to talk about today is creating a sense of urgency in us so that we don't fall prey to what goes on outside these walls. So we don't fall into this trap of I can do it later. I can obey God later. I can do His will later. So for those who know me, you know these are not the type of sermons I like to give. It's uncomfortable for me to talk about negative things in negative light. But I feel like it's the only way that we can remember the urgency that we have as Christians today. Because you see, the world could be ending soon. It might not be. We don't know. In Matthew chapter 24, the apostles had the same question. Jesus just got through telling them that the temple that they were admiring was going to be destroyed, and not one stone left upon the other. Well, that generated a few questions. It says in verse 3, and he sat on the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us when will these things be? Talking about the destruction of the temple. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? They were looking for a sign. How are we going to know that it's coming? How are we going to know that it's going to happen? Well, he just got through telling them through Matthew 24 about all the signs that were coming to tell them about the destruction of Jerusalem and to be ready. So now in verse 25, they say, well, what about a sign for the end of the age? He gives a three-part answer to them in chapter 25. And I want to look at those three parts today, and then I'm going to add one more to that. So for the first part of the answer, let's look at Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. And the bridegroom was delayed. They all became drowsy and slept, but at midnight there was a cry, "Here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish one said to the wise, "Give us some oil, for our lamps have gone out." But the wise answered, saying, "Since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves." And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterwards, the original virgins came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open up to us." But he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." Jesus' answer to them was, you don't get a sign. There will be no sign. So you just better be ready. In Matthew chapter 13, verses 32 through 37, he said, "But concerning that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come." It's like a man going on a journey when he leaves his home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. In other words, he's telling them, be alert at all times, because I may come back tonight. I may come back at midnight. I might come back tomorrow. Or it may not be for 1,000 years or more. No one knows. So we have to be awake at all times, because the last thing you want to do is be asleep when the Lord comes back. And when I say be asleep, I mean not ready. Not prepared, because we put it off. We don't know when that'll happen. I may not be able to finish this sermon. Half of them out there are going, well, that would be a good thing. It may not be until tonight. We may not see the morning sun tomorrow. We don't know. Well, we may live our entire life here, because no one knows except the Father when that'll happen. In Matthew chapter 25, verse 13, the verses we just read, the very last one, gives such impact to what he's saying. Watch, therefore. In other words, be aware, be prepared, for you know neither the day nor the hour. None of us know when God will come back again. But then he gave them another answer to that question. An answer they probably weren't prepared for. Use your talents. In Matthew chapter 25, now the verses 14 through 30. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them to his property. The one he gave 5 talents, to another he gave 2, and another he gave 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who has received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 more talents. So also he that had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug it in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled account with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours. But the master answered, You wicked, slothful servant. You knew I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming you should have received that which was my own with interest. So take that talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness, into the place where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's not enough that we stand awake and be prepared. But we have to be working. We have to be doing God's word, God's will, using the talents that he gave us so that we can glorify him. And in doing so, he will give us more. And we can use that to glorify him. We're not just to sit around and be aware like the 5 virgins going, oh, let's just wait. Or even those who got in because they just sat there and waited for the bridegroom. No, we're supposed to be out working for God. He's telling those disciples, don't just be alert, be active. Go out and spread my word. Go out and bring joy to the people. Go and heal those who need healing. Go and comfort those who need comforting. Go and save those who need saving. Don't just sit and wait. In John chapter 9, verses 4 and 5, he said, we must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Why? Night is coming, when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Do you get what he's saying here? You better be out working now while you can, because there's a day coming when you won't be able to work. And when that happens, it's done. It's over. There is a sense of urgency that Jesus is trying to get to his disciples. You can't put this off and wait. You got to do it now. You got to learn. You got to praise. You got to sing. You got to do those things, that the talents that God gave you, and use them for his purpose. Because once he returns, there will no longer be an opportunity to do that work. You see, it ends at that point. Actually, I threw that verse back in there by mistake. You see, there's a time coming when there will be no more appeal. There'll be a time coming where you can't say, I will do it later, because there is no later. There's a time coming when we will be judged, and there'll be nothing we can do to change it. It will be final. Notice the last. Matthew 25, now verses 31 through 46, as he finishes his answer to the disciples. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him he will be gathered all nations, and he will separate people one from another as sheep, or as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on the right, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on the right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I say to you, as you did to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me." Then he will say to those on the left, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer to them, "Truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. You see, it's not just enough to stand around and do, but we have to do God's will. We have to be working for him. We have to be helping each other, supporting each other, loving each other. And not saying, "Oh, I'll do that next week." Or maybe I'll do that next month when I get a bigger check. Or maybe I'll do it next year because I'll have more time. We don't want the Lord coming back to find us sleeping, but working, awake and alert, waiting for his coming, looking forward to it. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 33, again, those verses we just read, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all nations, and he will separate people from one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left." That's the final judgment. We will be standing before God, all nations. And he'll say, "Either come to my right or to my left." And he will make that judgment. And that judgment will be final. We can't appeal it. We can't argue it. We can't say, "Give me more time and I will change it." It's final. And there's nothing more we can do about it. Hebrews chapter 9, verses 27 through 28 says, "And just as it is appointed for man once to die, and after that comes judgment, so Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are eagerly waiting for him." He's not coming back to try to save anybody else. When he comes back, it's a done deal. Those who are in sin are now in sin. There's nothing that can be changed about it. That's not why he's coming back. He's coming back to gather those who have been alert, who have been working, those who are righteous. We want to be part of that band. So we need to have that urgency in our lives to say, "I don't know if that's going to happen tomorrow. I need to make sure I'm doing it today." Because I don't want to be standing before God tomorrow morning and have him say, you're on the left, and I go, but I was going to get to that this afternoon. My left, please. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, it says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. You see, our fate is determined when we go before the judge. There's nothing we can do to change it. We can't sit and appeal our case and go, but Father, let me tell you about the circumstances. Doesn't want to hear it. Our judgment is based on the actions that we do in this life, right now, from this moment on. Are we living with a sense of urgency, doing everything we can to serve God, to be righteous in his eyes, to glorify him through us? Are we putting it off for another day? You see, because the reason why this is so important is what happens after judgment. After judgment is the key. Matthew 25:34 says, then the king will say to those on the right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. In other words, come join us in heaven, where there is no pain, no sorrow, no hunger, no death, no tears. All is joy and peace. Come. Verse 41, though, says, then he will say to those on the left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. The eternal punishment. Not something temporary. And the world will try to teach you, oh, there is no hell. God would not torture anybody. He's too full of love. It just means that your soul's going to disappear, be burned up and be gone. That's not what it says here. It says eternal fire. Our punishment is eternal if we don't do his will. That's why this is so urgent. Not because of the judgment, but what the judgment brings. It's how we will spend all of eternity. Here's that fourth one I wanted to add in, that Jesus didn't cover with his disciples. See, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Christ may not come for another 1,000,000 years. We don't know. And the odds are most of us won't be around for that event, because our time on this earth, our lifespan will end. And with it, our chances. You see, that's just as final as if Christ would come back. In the book of Psalms, chapter 90, verses 9 through 10, it says, for all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength, 80. Yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Even if we live our full life, it is such a short period of time. A mere 80 years? 90? That's such a short time compared to what's going on and compared to eternity. And this is under the best of circumstances. But see, sometimes it's not under the best of circumstances. James chapter 4, verse 13 and 14 says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little while, for a little time, and then vanishes. You see, we are not guaranteed tomorrow. In high school, I ran with a bunch of guys. Bill, Ed, Fred, my brother from another mother, and Hoagie, who would run with us sometimes. And we were called the Irish Mafia because we were pranksters. One of our favorite pranks was to find somebody who left their car unlocked, sneak in, turn the radio on full blast, turn the windshield wipers on, turn everything on that we could possibly turn on, so when they turn on the key, the car explodes in their face. Loud music, lights flashing, windshield wipers going back and forth. We'd fill a car full of balloons, so when they come back, they'd have to pop the balloons to get in their car. Fun stuff. I know some of you are shocked that I'm that much of a prankster. Bill went to college and got a PhD in computer science. Poor fellow overeducated himself. Because he had a PhD, a lot of places wouldn't hire him. He ended up working at Toys R Us for the longest time in the computer and games section because it was the only place he could get a job. Finally, he was able to get a job as a teacher at a small college outside of town called Taft. And he would drive out to Taft. It's about a 45-minute drive out to Taft and back every day. This day he was on his way to Taft, and it was raining. The highway to Taft is 2-lane highway, one each way. And he got stuck behind an oil truck because there's oil fields all over the place out there. And oil trucks don't travel that fast, much less in the rain. But what they do is they throw up a lot of misty water behind him. And Bill was stuck behind him. Well, Bill had to get to school because he had to teach a class. And he couldn't see because of the mist of this rain. So he thought, I'll just pull around and pass this truck. So he pulled out to pass that truck. He says he has a vague remembrance of firemen on the hood of his car pulling car parts away, saying, it's a miracle this guy's even alive. The other man didn't make it. And then he passed out again. The other man, family man, was on his way from Taft to Bakersfield. He saw the same truck with all the mist. And that was the last thing he saw. He was killed instantly. He never saw it coming. Never saw it happen. His life was over like that. Bill agonized over it. He somehow survived, went through surgery after surgery after surgery. And while he was in the hospital, asked me and said, Mike, will you help me study the Bible? I said, of course I would. But then he put it off. And he put it off. And he kept putting it off. We had moved on to Memphis, Tennessee, and one day I got a phone call that let me know because of the injuries that he had suffered and the complications from those injuries, he finally passed. We never got to study God's Word together. You see, we may not even make it to 80. He only made it into his 40s. There's some that only make it to the 30s. Some only make it to their teens. There is no tomorrow. We can't wait until tomorrow because it may not even come for whatever reason. Now, I want to stop here and throw a disclaimer out again. This lesson, I did not do this to depress you. That's not the point of this. Even though it is a very dark lesson. But it's to give us that sense of urgency that to do God's will, we have to do it today, not tomorrow. If there's someone in need, we need to help them today, not tomorrow. If there's someone who needs to know about God's word, we need to talk to them today, not tomorrow. If we find ourselves in sin, we need to get right with God today, not tomorrow. Because there may not be a tomorrow. Either by our death or the returning of the Lord. That's the urgency I hope we get out of this lesson. Tom Evans said, your life is like a coin. You can spend it any way you want, but only once. Make sure you invest it and don't waste it. Invest it in something that matters to you and matters for eternity. You see, what we do today matters for our eternity. We need to spend our time wisely. Last verse. 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life, it's not from the Father, but it's from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. That's the sense of urgency we need. Do the will of God today.